Hello everybody, today on aviationwiz.com I'm going to be telling you, for the most part at least, some of the less common terms in aviation, but nonetheless it still would be something you probably want to know. Now, to start with, the reason why I said mostly is because for the first 4 words, they're very common. They're very common. You're going to say them a lot in aviation and you practically have to know them in order to do it. But nonetheless, for one reason or another, I felt like it was a little interesting, maybe a fun little fact about them, so I put them on the list anyways. So to start with, our first word that's very common, but you might be a little bit interesting when you look further into it, is Roger. Now, Roger got into this list because of the history of it. So, we have something called the airplane alphabet in aviation. Now, Roger was actually the R, and what I mean by that is, for example, A is Alpha, B is Bravo, C is Charlie, D is Delta, etc., etc. So you have the entire alphabet, but you have a specific word for each letter. And whenever they first made it, Roger was actually the R name. So for example, the airplane alphabet is often used for a tail number. For example, let's say my tail number was Whiz. So I would say Whiskey India Zulu for Whiz. So it's very simple stuff, but Roger was originally the first R. So, but later on they decided Roger should mean I understand, and that's what it means today. Today in aviation, if you want to say I understand, you say Roger. But they had Roger as, R. So nowadays in aviation, Romeo is the new R. So now Romeo is the way of saying R, and Roger is the way of saying I understand. But as I said, Roger means I understand, nothing else. So let's say they tell you to do something and they give you an order. If you say Roger, it doesn't mean you're going to do it. It just means that you understand that they said it. So some ATC controllers, and by that I mean air traffic control, they control the sky and all that, they'll probably get mad at, for the most part, they'll get mad at you if you say Roger. So the next word on our list is Wilco. Now, assuming to give you the direction like Whiskey India Zulu 12, turn to heading 180. Then in that case you will say Wilco, which means will comply, which means will do. So Wilco is the way of saying I will do what you said. So it's not that complicated. It's just that the fact that people often say Roger when they actually should say Wilco, which got the spot on the list. The next 2 words, and the final for the very common ones, but still interesting nonetheless when you look further into it, is negative and affirmative. Negative means no, affirmative means yes. So the reason why this be interesting is, why don't you just say yes or no? Well, the thing about radio communication, it's at the beginning and the end of the words, they tend to be kind of chopped off. Like for example, because the word is so short, yes and no are so short, so they'll probably just miss the word because it gets chopped off in the end. So they wouldn't hear yes or no, and it might lead to confusion, which would probably lead to problems. So that's why we use affirmative and negative. They're longer words and they can hear you better. So with affirmative and negative, that ends our little list of common words, but a little bit interesting once you look into them. Now we're going to look into the less common words, but they still need to know them. So start with Expidite. Expedite means do it now. Ask no questions, just do it now. Very simple term, but you still need to know it nonetheless in case of an air traffic controller tells you expedite, which means do it now. Like for example, expedite turn 180. That means do it now. So the next one is I've got a number for you to call. I've got a number for you to call basically means the number is the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. And usually that means that you're in trouble. You may have did something wrong and now you have to talk to the FAA about it. So most of the time this means that they're going to consider grounding you, or they might consider grounding you permanently. So grounding means you're not allowed to fly, simple stuff. Obviously temporary means it's temporary, you'll be able to fly soon. And permanent means it's permanent and you'll never be able to fly again. So it's very simple stuff, but still it's something you're gonna hear a lot in VATSIM, for example, which is basically the virtual aviation world where you can practice flying and all that. And most of the time, because it's not very serious, you're gonna hear the air traffic controllers sometimes they'll say, I've got a number for you to call. So anyways, moving on, we have Deadhead. Deadhead actually goes to some other industries, like for example trucking, But in this case, it means, so basically you're a flyer of a plane, you're a ATP or airline transport pilot. You know, it means you fly the aircraft companies that travel people around. So whenever you're a deadhead, it means that you're flying inside of a commercial plane, but you're not flying it. So what I mean by that is that you're basically getting travel from point A to point B. It could be A, you have to get home, or B, you're trying to get you to your next flight that you have to fly. So it's a very simple concept, it's just something you need to know though. So next we have G-force. G-force stands for gravitational force. So gravitational force is, you know, how much gravity is weighing on you. 1G would means normal gravity. Right now I am standing on the floor and the floor is pushing me down at 1G. Very simple stuff, not that complicated. Well, it gets more complicated when you get to 0 and negative G's. 0G means no gravity. Basically, you're free falling, meaning that you're not really having gravity applying to you. So 0G is very simple, but negative G's mean that gravity is actually working in the exact opposite way and pushing you away from the planet instead of towards it. So for example, if you were doing a nosedive in a plane, you would get negative G's because you're going so fast that you'd be pushed up against the ceiling. And then maybe if you start to go up really fast, you'll get like 3 G's, meaning 3 times the gravitational force. So that would mean you're 3 times heavier than usual. Well, you're not technically 3 times heavier, but your body will act like it. So since you're 3 times heavier, your body will maybe even shut down because your body is meant to handle 1G. It's meant to carry you at your weight you actually are. General idea of it. So moving on to vapor trail. Vapor trail means the clouds that you see behind a jet. Like sometimes maybe when you were a little kid, you saw that behind a jet you could see like a cloud forming behind it. That's the vapor trail. The vapor trail is caused when warm air, cold air, and moisture mix and creates a cloud. So a vapor trail is literally just a cloud that is caused by the jet. Simple stuff, just something, well, you don't really need to know that much, but it's just something to keep in mind. The next one is winglet. Winglet are little curves at the edge of the plane. So basically, at the end of the wing, you have a little curve there, and the curve is meant to stop airflow there. And the reason why is because whenever the air is flowing above the wing, you want it to continue to go all the way through the wing, but you don't want it to fall off the side of the wing. So the winglet is there to make sure that you have no air left behind, and all the air is helping lift the wing up, therefore lifting your plane. So winglet, very simple thing, but then again, still something you will probably want to know. Next is the hardest word to spell on this entire one, immelmann turn. An immelmann turn is half a loop, literally. It's just half a loop-de-loop. It's often used to just turn immediately. This could be used for multiple things. You're about to hit a mountain, you're about to crash into a UFO, you're about to crash into the world's largest dog, or maybe your girlfriend calls you and wants you to be home immediately. So it's just a way of turning immediately in, you know, an acrobatic plane you don't want to do. It's in your little tiny plane and then you just stall the plane in midair. So next is pancake landing. I should mention pancake landings most likely will only happen in a landing gear plane. A landing gear means you can control the plane, or the wheels actually. You can control if the wheels are inside the plane or they're outside. You want them inside because the wheels will kind of block airflow, therefore making it go a little bit slower. And you want them down because you need to land with your wings down. I mean, not wings, sorry, wheels. Sorry about the little confusion there. Anyways, but here's where the pancake landing comes in. If you have no wheels down and have your landing gear up whenever you decide to land, you're gonna do a pancake landing and scrape your plane along the ground. So 50% of all accidents in a plane are actually, most of the time, are gonna be landing gears, that they don't have the landing gear down. And out of that half, so half of them are landing gear failures, right? So in those half of the time, whenever the landing gear isn't down, it's because you have a landing gear failure, meaning the landing gear will not go down, it will not move down, so therefore you cannot land with your wheels down. And in that case, you would contact ATC, tell you your landing gear isn't working, and then they'll basically get a fire truck to come with the equivalent of soap and just cover it all over the ground to try to lessen the impact of the landing. Of course, if I were them, I would use syrup because it's a pancake landing, so of course you want to use syrup. But whatever, they're the big guys, they can do what they want. So moving on, another one is that you just forgot to put the landing gears on. Like, the reason why you need to get a license is called the complex license. You need a license to operate a landing gear plane. The reason why is because you need to remember to put your landing gears down. That seems like a very dumb thing, but it's actually kind of necessary. It'd be because we have a lot more accidents with pancake landings if not. Because here's the thing, there's oftentimes in aviation, if you have a warning, you're gonna want to focus on that warning and try to see what it's about. So let's say you have an altimeter failure. Your altimeter is not showing you the correct information. You'll probably want to fix that. And the reason for the training is to tell you, okay, if you need to fix your altimeter, you're gonna want to basically abort the landing just in case you forget to put your landing gear down so that you don't do a pancake landing. So even with that training, the chaos can get kind of intense sometimes and you still forget to put your landing gear down. So while yes, you could absolutely blame the pilot half the time for the pancake landings, at the same time, it kind of is reasonable that you forget it because there's some other alarm telling them that's an emergency, it's an emergency, you have to do this now. And they just forget that they need to put their landing gear down in the first place. So after pancake landing, we have redeye, a much simpler term to understand. Redeye means you're flying from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. A lot of the time, a redeye flight, the reason why you want to use it is when you're traveling. So let's say you want to go to New York to Los Angeles. If you started in the morning, you would use one entire day to get to Los Angeles. But if you do a redeye flight, you would have to spend 0 days getting there because you did it during the night and you slept there. But of course, you know, you're gonna have a very bad sleep, but nonetheless, you got there without skipping a day basically. So redeye landings, or not landings, redeye flights are actually kind of cool and a little bit nice to have, and it's definitely, you should be glad that you have them. So next we have Mach. Mach means speed of sound, which means 767 miles per hour. So very simple stuff, you're just going at the speed of sound. Not really that complicated. So moving on, sonic boom. Sonic boom is when you go past the sound barrier and then you make a boom because all the sound waves start to crash into each other. Again, another simple concept, still know it though. And then subsonic, you're going below the speed of sound. And obviously you probably want to say you're going barely below the speed of sound, because if I were to move my hand right now, I'd technically be going subsonic. But usually when you say subsonic, you mean you're almost at the speed of sound, but not quite. And then the next turn is supersonic. It means the exact opposite. It means you're going above the speed of sound. So again, very simple. And then the final one is jet wash. Jet wash has two different meanings. A, you're washing your jet. I mean, most of the time that's not what you're going to refer to, but hey, it technically is true. And the second one is that jet wash, whenever you're in a jet, you cause a lot of friction behind you, aka turbulence. And this turbulence makes very bumpy air. And if you want to see a good example of this, I would recommend going to Pushing Tin and type in Pushing Tin on YouTube, as in Pushing Tin jet wash. And you should probably find a funny clip. And I put jet wash in the end so you can immediately go watch that video. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a good laugh watching that video. And then see you next time.